The beginning of a comeback.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Well, it was a much better week for the city of Pawtucket than has been the struggle for the last 2 years. It's looking better. Of course, nothing's done until it's done. What did Yogi say? Yeah, never over till it's over. And there are some dangling participles to this economic package that was introduced in Pawtucket this week. But there's no doubt that there's some excitement. And there's an interesting, I wouldn't call it ambivalence, but an interesting lack of pushback from those whose squeaky wheels operate whenever there are private-public partnerships in the offing, which tells me that combined with no need for a referendum and no need for legislative approval, that this is, as the old sports cliche would be, this is Pawtucket and the Commerce Departments for the state of Rhode Island's game to lose. Great to have you aboard. Thanks very much for tuning in on this Friday evening. For those of you who know the routine, Friday shows are taped on Thursday afternoon, early in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. So in case all heck breaks loose, we catch up on Monday with another regularly scheduled program. But it's good because we had a chance to expand, and he's never lost for words. The mayor of Pawtucket, who has really fought the good fight, is here, so we can expand on this. I do want to ask him about some of the hospital stuff that's going on right now, because there's some knee bone connected to the ankle bone problems that Lifespan, I think, is dealing with. We covered a little bit of that on last night's show. In the meantime, here was the headline. And instead of running the story of the day, Eyewitness News put together kind of a comparison between that which was proposed with the Pawsox and that which is proposed with this new project.
It's going to light up Pawtucket.
The enthusiasm is as big as the investment.
It's a massive development.
Monday, state and city leaders announced this plan, $400 million to build a soccer stadium on the river in Pawtucket, connected to the other side with a new pedestrian bridge leading to a hotel, retail shops, apartments, and potentially an event center if leaders can buy the Apex land. The $400 million price tag for all of it is far larger than the $83 million proposal to keep the Pawsox.
The largest economic development project in the history of Pawtucket.
The cost of the Pawsox deal was controversial and it fell apart. In this new $400 million proposal, state taxpayers would be on the hook for $70 to $90 million, or roughly 20% of the project. It's nearly double what the failed Pawsox project would have cost taxpayers, but the share is different. For that $83 million plan, taxpayers would have been responsible for $38 million, or 46%. Speaker Mattiello, who was against the Pawsox deal during a tight election year, said all taxpayer money on this new proposal would be spent on infrastructure, not the soccer stadium.
It's amazing, it's exciting, and it's all done. The soccer stadium is going to be 100% funded with private investment, no public investment.
The private partner, Fortuitous, will own the stadium, another difference with the Pawsox plan. And the state says while the failed Pawsox proposal would have generated money, this plan should bring in twice as many dollars as invested over the next 30 years.
Double, ladies and gentlemen, is the potential.
We'll see. The Speaker of the House should have worn a T-shirt to that event that says, "I'm so sorry. Does this make it better for you?" Anyway, Mayor.
Good to be here, Dan.
You love to be drawn into my commentary,
Absolutely.
don't you? Yeah. It's not quite true, unless you consider that the land underneath the stadium doesn't count in terms of building a stadium. In your briefing this week, you articulately explained, along with the Commerce Secretary, that the city will end up owning the land, and that will be part of the city's infrastructure acquisition costs, correct?
Yes, that is where we're heading now, but it's not final. So we have 120 days that we put together for the due diligence for all the finalization. But there's been talk of whether the city should own it and whether the team itself. But for reasons that we're talking with National Grid right now, it's probably better that the city own it. So we're still working through those. But yeah, we probably will own that, the field itself, or the land.
Before we get into the nuances of how this came together, what could be, the emotion of the city and all of that. Eric, if you could just put up the full screen, the still full screen of the picture of the project, and keep it there for a little bit as Don and I kind of talk about this. So without pointers and a real PowerPoint presentation, on the left, the green spot is the stadium.
Correct.
And it's kind of a C shape that will look out onto the Seekonk River. You can see that 95 is behind. So if you are, say, going from Providence to the Mass State Line into the Attleboro's and on your way up to Boston, you'll be looking down to your right at the stadium. And the stadium won't be looking at the highway. It will be looking across the river at what is a pretty significant piece of development that extends from, if you think about the bottom right, already you have a landing there. It's called
State Pier.
State Pier. Is it used a lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
By whom?
We have fishermen, it's open recreation. We do the arts and festival. We have our Chinese dragon boats down there.
Oh, right.
it's
The
used quite a
Dragon
lot,
Boats
yeah.
comes out of
Yep.
there. Right. But I wouldn't say that it is statewidely known by any stretch.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. But it certainly is a niche plus already for the community. That then extends, go right straight up the right side of the river there into what is the proposed development. And you were good to point out, I think, this week that former city leadership made a wise move to acquire that land.
Absolutely.
So that land is already
Between the city and the PRA, which is the Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency, depending where you are, it's owned by both.
right. So as we go back now, look at now that section on the right is proposed for retail, residential, commercial, cool bars next to your cool condo, next to an office space you may actually be able to live in if you wanted to hit the trifecta as a resident, correct?
Yes.
So that's
Right, it's exciting,
Kind
absolutely.
of like a Riverwalk in San Antonio. When I talked to the developer on the radio about that, he was keen on the comparison.
Yep.
And then it goes up. This is where it gets a little sketchy. It goes up under the highway, and to the north, it's a little hard for you to see unless you got a big screen. But that's the Apex building site, which has a hotel and an indoor sports center at least plotted for it right now. If this all comes together, that walkway underneath the bridge would continue up to that property, correct?
Correct.
All right. So there's your pretty site. All right. Thank you. People have to visualize this
No,
whole
you're
thing.
right.
It could be, should be at this juncture, right? One of the coolest spots in Rhode Island, if not New England.
Yeah, it would be, absolutely. And, you think about this, it's a $300 million private investment, 300 plus, I should say, right? So we're still working out those numbers. We've talked about from 70 to 90 would be the state incentive. And that's really for the public infrastructure, which goes to making sure that the residents and the public have access to the waterfront. Bikeways, walkways, there's going to be some infrastructure cost for sewage, those type of things. But we have now the partner that everybody's talked about for years and probably centuries if you really look at it. We've never had that private partnership, and we have that private commitment from Fortuitous to build this, and we're excited about it.
Fortuitous, again, is the company
Company,
that is the quote developer and soccer folks. They were tentatively scheduled for our broadcast this week, but they are going to appear next week, I'm told. So Mr. Johnson, the developer who was at this event this week, will come next week and talk more about his vision of the site. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the loose components of this, and they are still a little loose. Stay with us.
What would the brainstorm be about the McCoy site?
I'd love to turn it into a sports complex. I'd love to have a bunch of fields there and activated for youth. I mean, I think I had mentioned earlier today, one of the most incredible aspects of having a USL soccer franchise is how many kids get into your programs. We have over 10,000 boys and girls in our youth program in Phoenix, and I certainly intend on building relationships with all the youth clubs here on Rhode Island. And from what I've always seen, every single market has an insatiable demand for more playing fields. And so I think McCoy could be perfectly repurposed for a year-round sports center for the greater community, not just soccer fields.
So that's the owner again of the group that is coming in here to build this incredible project in Pawtucket. Don Grebien is my guest. Eric, throw you a curveball. Can you put that full screen up one more time of the site? I just want to remind everybody that this brand new announcement has nothing to do with McCoy. McCoy Stadium is nowhere to be seen. In fact, if you become kind of a Rhode Island Magellan, although I can't drive through Pawtucket to save my life, McCoy would be kind of bottom right to this thing, about a half a mile up, and it still remains a question mark. You have had to kind of reorient everybody in this announcement to remind them that this is an economic development replacement advancements from the loss of the Paw Sox, but not a replacement for McCoy Stadium.
Correct, right. And so there will be, so I think everybody gets confused, including ourselves. It was under the McCoy RFP, request for proposals, right? So that's why everything came in, but it was really open to the city. So it's stopped.
Your government speak. So what's fine. No, we talk in this lingo so fast, I want to make sure you understand. So when the whole thing went down, you guys said, oh, okay, let's base a recovery program and do a request for a proposal, RFP, for something that would perhaps be in McCoy since the Paw Sox are leaving. This one evolved to the river.
Right, it evolved to the river. Still a reuse of McCoy, because there are some options out there, and multiple options. We have not determined. This one proposal here from Fortuitous floated to the top.
Meaning there were other proposals that could be used over at McCoy.
Correct.
Mostly that chatter is about baseball.
Baseball, as you heard from Fortuitous, there could be an option still out there to use it for soccer fields. The other option we've talked about is it's going to come down to cost, Dan, right? And how much it really is going to cost us to level that versus put more money into it. And then do we use it for governmental? Do we use it for other types of amenities or new business for that matter?
And it won't surprise you when I say this.
Right.
What am I going to say?
Well, in your own words, forget about it.
Forget about baseball.
Reuse, yeah.
No, forget about baseball.
Right.
Yeah, what you do there is still, baseball ain't going to work. I mean, look what MLB just did with their downsizing of minor league baseball. I think that ship is about to sail formally when the Paw Sox become the Woo Sox. We'll talk about your emotion over that when that announcement came in a minute. What I was talking to Mr. Johnson about, though, was this kind of underlying rumor mill that's existing amongst people who are in the know or think they are in the know about this whole development thing. Your dangling economic worry is Hasbro, which is your biggest, employer and marquee business, which has been shopping all over the world and perhaps the rest of Rhode Island for a new site. Some would say that Commerce is having a conversation with Hasbro about going into the Apex site, which may mitigate or change what Mr. Johnson is thinking about the Apex site. He was actually excited when I talked about Hasbro going to Apex because that probably feeds his B part, meaning the Riverwalk thing in a beautiful way, and then his interest in McCoy would then become a focus. If all of that happened, that would be almost your perfect needle threaded, don't you think?
Yeah, and we've talked about this a little bit. Absolutely. I mean, it's all about, right now, it's about Fortuitous, right? It's about the opportunity. I go back to this, right? The legislature, the governor, everybody's working on the same page. The speaker and the Senate president.
Again, Fortuitous being the developer.
Developer, sorry.
Yeah.
Is the legislation that was passed is very helpful. It's a helpful tool to us that we wouldn't, if it wasn't for the legislature passing it, we wouldn't have this opportunity. So the TIF. So now you have the other opportunity that what happens with Hasbro. You've heard me for the last 3 years, 4 years, pitching that how important Hasbro is to community Pawtucket. We want to keep them here. We've given them multiple options over the years, and get nervous because we hear the rumors. I've heard in the they might be going. We are respecting them. They're a private business. We've made it clear that we want them here in Pawtucket. We believe that we have multiple sites that would fit their needs. This one now really enhances that because it would help that Fortuitous development as well as, by getting the people in there, as you said, Dan, and also to them will have all of the amenities that they want.
The other thing that needs to be understood about Pawtucket, I'm really bullish on not just because the mayor is here. I've been saying this all along. There is there's a hidden story of Hoboken Plus in Pawtucket. You know, Hoboken, I'm a Jersey guy, it used to be just a laugh loud dump. I mean, Hoboken, you wouldn't want to get caught dead in Hoboken. And for the last 15, 20 years, it has been the hottest spot outside the Hudson River where everybody wants to live and work, perhaps. Down by Colette, travel, and as the Blackstone River winds down, there's so much ample developable opportunity that actually links to the backyard of Central Falls. And the condominium and real estate development that's already occurred there and what could develop is potentially another place for Hasbro to be if that place ends up becoming the kind of cool spot that it could be. Hidden gem, nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I mean,
you agree?
Yeah, no, fair. And I mean, Colette is a wonderful business as well, right? They've expanded and they're growing in Pawtucket. You talk about that development on the other side with, there are multiple developers, but the biggest developer would be the Tayo Group that has most of those apartments and condos. They've renovated all of this old mill space along Roosevelt Avenue.
And there's still much more to be renovated.
Right.
And maybe some buyouts of some businesses and, God forbid, eminent domain. We'll talk about that in a second. But the place could be unbelievable.
Right. I mean, even where we talked about before, if City Hall and the school department, we have locations in our downtown. We want to get out of the way, right, from an active zone. I mean, it's good to have bodies there, but maybe we look at that differently, and you've got the commuter rail, you know, future commuter rail style. So it's all boxed in within a matter of a mile.
I played cards with a buddy last night. He's like, yeah, okay, but, you know, it's really not, you know, regarding Hasbro, I mean, you know, they want access to big city. I mean, you can't even get to Boston from here. I said, well, the rail's going in. He said, what rail? So there's a big learning curve, I think, for a lot of folks to come on to here. But if not for that, McCoy could end up being a municipal facility. Can you visualize moving out of that old city hall and moving everything up to that site, or converting both Tolman and Shea high schools into a, I don't know, McCoy High School? Huh,
yeah,
there you go. At that site?
Right now, we're in phase 2 of the schools, right, which is to upgrade each individual school. But what we'd have to do and would do is an analysis. We've talked about it. We just didn't have the dollars to do it, to see if we could take some of the non-taxable properties that city government is on, schools, City Hall. Would that be a better move to put it on the McCoy site, which is non-taxable? And would we get a higher tax value revenue, which offsets the tax base, right? Or keep them where they are?
Is that whole Roosevelt section?
Yep.
Is that all in the TIF?
Yes. Yes.
So, folks, what you need to understand about this TIF thing and this $70 to $90 million of taxable money is there'll be a bond, most likely. You'll borrow money ahead for the redevelopment authority, but it will be financed by what is called the TIF. It's a tax incremental finance zone, which means the monies, the sales taxes, the income taxes that are generated from that stay in
I like
the
way you
property.
explain it, and I forget because we talked, they would stay in that property.
So
in
it's
those
self-sufficient.
districts. Correct.
Which was the idea for the Paw Sox 2.
Correct.
Because the TIF was established not just for the Paw Sox project, but for the development that was scheduled to go around the stadium
and
at
that's why
Apex.
the General Assembly was advocating, we wanted to use revenue bonds, we all got into what was backstop. All of that has changed in this new legislation. It protects everybody and it incentivizes it. So quickly what you do is you have a baseline of taxes that already comes out of this district. We would never go into that baseline. Okay, the new legislation, the new development would be on all incremental.
New monies.
New monies coming into it. That, but for the development, we wouldn't have.
Right. So you borrow the money to
Against
seed
that. The
development churns the revenue
got it.
that
Back into it.
finances
Pays off
the
the
fund
debt.
money.
Yep.
Got it? That the Paw Sox deal was the same thing, Speaker. When we come back, the other big dangling participle. Stay with us. So one thing that we have to make sure we don't neglect here is that you're not closed on Apex. So Site C of the rendering that we've been showing you is still your Achilles heel. It was part of the thing that people suggested made the Paw Sox move to that site of folly because you didn't have a deal done with them. Why did you announce all this without a deal done with Apex?
So a couple things. Number one is we've been having ongoing conversations with them, and they're much more open this time. And the difference this time is we have a solid project, and we have funding
What, the Pawtuckets weren't solid?
No, but a solid where there are additional dollars coming in. So before we go through this process, we have to have some money to put into that. We had set a value.
Meaning you had a dangling legislative argument still going on.
Yes. Yeah, and so in the new legislation...
You didn't have, it's like buying a house without a mortgage approval.
Okay, fair.
Right?
Yes.
You start working over the guy you want to buy the house from, he's like, well, when you're real, come back and see me.
See me, correct.
Right? Well,
Yep.
you've got a developer with 300 mil, he says he can provide.
Right.
And you've already got pre-approved legislative enabling to get this thing done.
Done,
So
correct.
that's the difference for him?
Yes, absolutely.
Got you.
Yeah, and so...
But
he's-
reportedly, you're still millions and millions apart.
You know, we're closer than we've ever been. You know, we have to make this work one way or another.
Will you take it by eminent domain?
As a last case resort, absolutely.
Would you be sick to your stomach doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to, right? Because it's about fair
Bad
market value.
touch.
Absolutely, right? Nobody
What's the
wins in that
deadline for the Apex owners to say, all right, deal?
You know, that's probably, in fairness, we haven't set that date, but we're saying within the 120 due diligence as well, because we need to.
So it's 120 days.
Financing coming in is also through the opportunity zones, which we didn't get to, but, you know, for the fortuitous group, the preferred developer. So there's money that can be applied to that. So it really comes down to, is Apex willing to work with us? And I think they are. What is the price? If the gap is that high and it's in everybody's best or worst interest to do eminent domain because we can't get the gap down, right? We don't want to take the property. We want to give him his value for it, but he's got to be willing to be reasonable.
Headline from Woonsocket, they formally named him the Woo Sox, big surprise. Did you shed a tear that day a little bit?
Yeah, I was bothered by it, absolutely. I mean, it took me a day, and then the next day, I text Larry and text Charles and said, hey, you know, nice rollout, you know, I want to stay above it, but absolutely hurt, you know, because they should have stayed here as the boss on.
Down the line, we'll talk about other issues. We only have a minute here. Lifespan is sucking pond water right now with some cash flow problems, and one of the things they suggest is the Memorial to Miriam emergency traffic is hurting them. Memorial being Care New England, not your issue directly, but I know you've been looking for a solution. What's 30 seconds on that?
Quickly, we have Care New England. It has a purchase and sale with Everhart, Lockwood out of New York, looking to do a veterans to purchase just the old hospital. Memorial Hospital, to turn it into a veterans care facility, if you will, not a veterans hospital, all assisted. We're still looking at an emergency room. The Jonathan Snow report quickly that was being done from the state to verify all the needs, which will support, could support, let me say.
Acrimony aside between Care New England and Lifespan, there is an emergency traffic issue that's got to be resolved.
There is a need to the community that is not being met that they need to resolve, and the data hopefully will support that, which I believe it will, which will come out this month.
You got a lot on your plate.
Absolutely.
You're busy. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Good
Same to you.
comeback so far.
Yeah.
All right. Don Grebien, fighting the battle. Final word when we come back. I'll tell you, the punch in the gut that the city of Pawtucket got with the announcement that the Paw Sox were headed north to Worcester was something that would take out most municipal leaders and city governments. You got to give Don Grebien a ton of credit for staying the course, fighting the good fight, keeping an open mind, keeping a positive attitude, and pushing the state for its responsibility to step in where it fell down. Then a developer comes and maybe they live happily ever after. Time is going to tell. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Good night.